Hey everybody! We've learnt a lot about the planets that you find in the solar system and some of the dwarf planets. We're going to add a whole lot more detail now and look at the whole structure of the solar system, what it looks like and what we find there. So all this information has come from astronomers using telescopes and measuring what they can see, or by using space probes, which we've actually sent out. They're little spacecraft, and we've sent them out, and they've actually been able to detect a whole lot of other things in the solar system. So first of all, remember that the solar system is basically flat and disc-shaped. So if you look at it almost from side on, the orbits of the planets are all quite similar in that they're all lying on the same level. So then if we look from side on at the solar system, all the orbits of the planets basically line up with each other. And they'll all overlap. So that's the side view of what you can see on the solar system. Think of a big disk or a big plate, and that's the shape of the solar system. The other thing to remember is that most planets in the solar system have at least one moon as well. So obviously the Earth has a moon, and actually scientists have found it's every single planet except for Mercury and Venus that have a moon. Mercury and Venus don't. Jupiter has 79 moons. So the number of moons can vary a lot depending on the planet. Okay, so this is a more detailed view of the solar system. We're now looking at it from a top-down view onto the disk. And just like last time, this one's not to scale. Actually, none of these things are to scale. The distances and the planets, they're all out of proportion. But it's helpful to see what's there. So obviously we've got the Sun. We've also got the 4 inner planets, which we've learnt about before. Or the rocky planets, they're also called. After the rocky planets, there's this region where there's a whole lot of asteroids orbiting the Sun in a ring, basically. And this is called the Asteroid Belt. And actually, as you can see here, there's a dwarf planet in the asteroid belt called Ceres. That's only a recent discovery. It fits in with the definition of a dwarf planet. And it's part of the asteroid belt. It's almost a really, really big asteroid. Okay, then there's also just single asteroids that orbit around either planets or they're orbiting the Sun, and they're not part of an asteroid belt. So these are basically just free asteroids. And the definition of an asteroid that scientists came up with is really just, it's a rocky object, and it's smaller than a planet and a dwarf planet. Rocky objects, smaller than planets and dwarf planets. Okay, a lot of asteroids aren't round, so there can be even quite long-shaped ones. The other thing that's common in the solar system are comets. So you've probably seen the shape of a comet before. It has a head area, and then it has a tail as well. So it looks like a classical cartoon shaped object that's flying through the air, and it's got a long tail behind it. But actually, the tail just depends on the sun. It doesn't trail behind the direction that it's going. So comets are a little bit different to asteroids. They still orbit the sun, but they're not rocky and solid like asteroids are. They're actually made of dust and frozen gases. Which scientists just call ice. And that big tail of the comet that trails out behind it, that's made up of a whole lot of this dust and ice that's being blown off the comet by the rays of energy from the sun. Okay, if we're continuing further out, beyond Neptune, then we've got the area called the Kuiper Belt, which I've actually already mentioned before. And the Kuiper Belt is just another asteroid belt that lays in the outer area of the solar system. It's a lot bigger than the inner asteroid belt. And it's where the dwarf planets Pluto and Eris are found, which we've talked about before. There's also another dwarf planet, which was discovered recently, called Makemake. And I think the 4 other dwarf planets are also found in the Kuiper Belt too. Okay, so those are the main areas and all the major things that you can find in the solar system.